Eberechi Eze. You've been
Bring him
talking.
in. Bring him in, Ben.
I thought that was coming. Yeah, I mean, it looks like you might actually get your wish because it seems like Arsenal are actually, they've got a serious interest in him now. If reports are to be believed, supposedly made contact with his camp over the weekend as well, exploring a deal for him. I mean, as you just said there, he'd be seemingly near the top of your list just for any sort of signing for Arsenal this summer, Eberechi Eze. And this is, as well as Arsenal being linked with the likes of Rodrigo, Rafael Leao, Nico Williams, all these top wingers. But you are a massive fan of Eberechi Eze. So first of all, just wanted to know if there was one particular sort of skill or quality that Eze brings that maybe the others don't, that really sets him that level above from Arsenal's other reported targets for you.
I think it's his creativity in the central areas. And what's interesting certainly in the report that David put in the Athletics today about Eze is that this would be it wouldn't necessarily be in place of one of the other wingers. It would be a striker, winger, and Eze, which is really really exciting. I think. Because I just think we know what Arsenal lacked last season, apart from fitness and everyone staying healthy. They just lacked the ability to really break down the low blocks teams who sat deep and just offered them very little space. And they really, really struggled against it. There was just so many draws because they couldn't score two, three goals and kill games off. It was always on a knife edge. Eze, I think, just gives you that sort of X factor type player that Arsenal in this squad really, really lacks. He can do it from out wide, so he can hurt teams from out wide, but he can hurt teams from the centre as well. He can do things himself. He can open up a game like that out of absolutely nothing by a moment of quality, individual brilliance. I just don't think Arsenal really have that in the squad. They've got loads of brilliant players, but there's not many who, apart from Saka, who would just think suddenly in a really tight game would just do something that you'd just be like, wow, and suddenly bang, you're winning 1-0 because of a moment of absolute individual brilliance. We've seen Eze do that so many times in games for Palace. And I would just love that to come into the squad at Arsenal. I think it'd be perfect. I think it would lessen the load on Martin Odegaard as well. You could play instead of Martin Odegaard if Odegaard's struggling like he was at times last season. Give Odegaard a breather, which he really lacked because there was no one else who could do it. So he had to play when he was playing badly. He could play alongside Martin Odegaard if needs be. He can play out on the left. It's just real versatility and quality, and it's just what this Arsenal squad is crying out for in my view. It's why I've been banging the drum about Eze for a long, long time, and the talks have now taken place. That's right. The only thing is that sort of urges a side of caution with it is that Arsenal have held talks with an awful lot of people. It is the approach that Andrea Berta's having. So just because these talks have taken place now with Eze's camp doesn't necessarily mean that a bid is going to follow. I hope it does, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to follow. They now know exactly sort of the terms of any deal, what it would take, all that sort of stuff, which is the idea of the meeting in the first place. But they've done that with an awful lot of players so far this summer. So yeah, caution for now on it, but I would absolutely, I really do hope that a bid follows. I think it's exactly what Arsenal need.
Yeah, like you said, still very early stages, of course, but yeah, I saw that report from David as well this morning, how it'd be separate to the search for a new left winger, which, is really intriguing for me as well, because I'm not sure about you, but I thought if he did come in, for the price that's been quoted reportedly, I think 68 million release clause, you'd
Mm.
expect, a player of that price and that caliber would be starting week in, week out if he was fit. But if he's separate from this left winger search, if Arsenal can still bring in another player on that side, could you see as if he is going to start regularly as we think he is, maybe starting sort of in the number 10 position one week, then in the left wing position the next week? What sort of role do you think he can play in that starting 11?
Yeah, I think he'd be so versatile. He could play in many positions. I mean, you would kind of feel like someone would have to go, surely, if Eze, a winger, and a striker did come in. Um, who that would be, I don't know, but it feels like that's an awful lot of players there competing for positions. Hopefully they don't, and you can just compete. And Arteta's got a whole host of players available that you can use, that you can trust, that he can rotate, and then make sure that everyone's fresh and ready to go next season. So hopefully it doesn't mean anyone would go, but it kind of, when you look at it, my first initial thought was that someone surely would have to go at that point. But yeah, he can play left wing. He can play in centre. Like I said, he can play instead of Martin Odegaard as a right eight if needs be. I don't really see him playing as a 10. I don't think Arsenal are going to change their system. I'd be very surprised if they go to a sort of 4-2-3-1 type formation. I don't see that happening. So I think we'll still see the 4-3-3 that we've become accustomed to under Arteta. But it would just give him so many more options. Like I said, he could play left eight, right eight, left wing. Um, yeah, it's just multiple options.
Does really seem to tick every single box for Mikel Arteta, doesn't he, Eberechi Eze? And at the price that we just mentioned, so the 68 million release clause, which can be paid, I think, in three instalments, Ben Jacobs said. And it's also, I think he was the first to report that Tottenham, they do have an interest, but they sort of backed off. It's not really anything serious from Tottenham's side right now. Seems that Arsenal, even though it is early stages, they might have the most serious interest. So in your eyes, I think I know the answer to this, but while they do seem to be at the head of the queue, is this one that they should really attack and make their priority once once Kepa, Zubimendi, Norgard, and maybe Mosquera are in? Would you maybe put him at the top of the list, maybe even above a new striker?
No, I'm not. I think a striker has to be the priority this window. Absolutely has to be the priority. But he would be very, closely behind that striker position for me. All three of them would be so hugely important: a winger, a striker, and as a if he is going to be separate to the other, to the wide man. I think they'd all be equally important. But I think the whole world is watching Arsenal about the striker. They just for purely optics reasons, for everyone's sanity, it needs to be sorted so quickly, so we can just stop talking about Arsenal and the number nine, who's it going to be, all that sort of stuff. And I know football clubs don't operate to sort of stop because of the optics and stuff like that, but in this case, they really should, because it absolutely needs to be sorted very, very quickly.